I'm excited for this. We were talking a little bit before, so I could kind of get the gears turning. The major power index, or excuse me, pressure index. So I think winning the whole thing is too much. This is for top four. And the idea here is whether it is the team themselves or the Rocket League community, what are the teams that have the most pressure on them to win, to get top four in this major, and why? And I'll give you the first pick. Who do you think is the team that is under the most pressure to get a top four?
Uh, Personally, I think it's hands down not even a question G2. And I'll tell you
Wow.
why. I'll tell you why. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because I went back and forth on this in my head. When you prompted me on this, I was like, oh, I think I know where we're going to go with this, but I'm going to say G2, and here's why. Um, because no, first of all, nobody believes in any of the other teams from NA. Even Gen G. Like, I don't think people have talked about Gen G a lot. I think everyone's saying it's G2 or it's nothing.
Hmm.
And if G2 loses, they let down an entire region. Like, all of NA is sitting there saying, this is the pinnacle of our region. And the competition next to G2 and NA, I think clearly hasn't been the same. Versus like a Europe, for example.
Mm.
Regardless of KC winning 3 in a row, because I think just KC is the best team in the world. But G2, if they lose, I don't think people would move to Gen G and be like, okay, but at least we have Gen G, right? I think that they would say, oh no, there goes our biggest gladiator. And all we have left are Gen G, Luminosity, and OG. I think they all get grouped together. And it's why I'm not putting someone like a K Corp, because if K Corp loses, all of Europe will go, well, at least we have Vitality. Well, at least we have BDS. And you have way more confidence in a BDS and a Vitality winning this event than I would say Gen G, Luminosity, and OG. So that's why I'm saying I think it's G2 by far and away, because when they lose, that's the biggest and baddest that NA has to offer. And I don't think people have the same confidence in the teams that come after them.
Corelli, I thought you were just going to wade us slowly into the water with Carmine Core here. I love the
No.
G2 take. I mean, I don't want to go screw it. I'm interested about Gen G because I was like, maybe we shouldn't talk about them through G2, but Gen G, all they've done is gotten better. They picked up First Killer, who is clearly a talent upgrade. He
Yep.
is somebody who led FaZe to be the number one seed in North America in perpetuity for last season. Why are people not looking at Gen G in the same way? Chronic has just gotten better. Apparently, Jack is still the leader that he is. Like, why are they not considered? Because I agree with you.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, what I just said isn't necessarily my personal take. Like, I
No,
would
this
still say,
is.
oh, at least we have Gen G, but I think the community wouldn't think that. So that, just to
I'm with you.
clarify.
I'm with you.
So I don't know. I don't know. I when I look at the roster of apparently Jack, Chronic, and First Killer,
Yeah.
I would say, and if G2 didn't exist, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is like the holy grail. I mean, this is amazing. This is a great team. I mean, you have so much experience, so much success, and apparently Jack, and then I would say Chronic as well, kind of looped in together now because they've had that success throughout the year. And then you have like the number one statistical leader in North America since like ever, basically since he joined the league. I mean, the guy has never gotten worse. That's the thing about First Killer. Now, you could talk about his play style, and I have plenty to say about that. Maybe the wrong podcast for it, but I think that First Killer by himself, though, I mean, fantastic player, and obviously Gen G's made it work, right? Like, what was it? I have it right here. Gen G's, yeah, second, top four, and first. I mean, those are great finishes for Gen G, and obviously the majority of those I think were stopped by G2, and then they overcame G2,
Yep.
which is even better in qualifier 3. So, um, but like I said, I just don't think that Gen G has the same pressure, right? If Gen G loses out and G2 keeps going, everyone be like, oh well, Gen G lost. Oh well, that wasn't our best, right? So yeah, but I agree. I don't know why more people aren't talking about Gen G. I think they're a fantastic team. The chess pieces of Gen G are all queens in my mind. So, which is a weird way to put an all boys team,
No,
but
that's
but in the world of chess, that makes sense. So yeah, I think Gen G is a super strong team, even if G2 didn't exist.
That was a great metaphor. I actually really liked that. I was like, oh, I need to use that in some other. Yeah, I just thought we would go Carmine Core, but now that you bring up G2, I mean, it makes sense. They really are the golden child. They are the offering to the gods
Yep.
of what the region is, and it's just it's challenging because I was doing Adam Core's, he puts out the sheet and you can kind of see who's going to go where. And,
Yeah.
I did a couple iterations just to see what was what. And in one of them, I didn't have G2 making top eight. I was just like my topsy turvy one. And I was
Wow.
just like, I don't think that it's super out of the question for the pressure to get to them because they know what they are for North America. Like they know that they are clearly the talisman, they are the torchbearers, they're the spearhead for what the region should be. And I think Carmine Core has the same kind of pressure, but the region just I think they're presenting deeper talent. So maybe they don't feel it in the same way. But now that you've said it, I mean, G2, there's a lot of pressure on them. I guess the other side of the coin is I wonder how much of that pressure they're putting on themselves.
Yeah.
Because they kind of lapsed at the end. They didn't get the three-peat. They let Genji beat them, which I think is huge for Genji's confidence going into this. Not
Yep.
to ramble on too long here, but definitely the community has the most pressure on them. I wonder about themselves. I'll just go ahead and take the easy one off the board here and go Carmine Core.
Yep.
Um, I don't think I've seen anybody's predictions about this that isn't hard trolling that doesn't have them in the grand finals.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty well deserved. They have been the most dominant team in the most dominant region, and they have one of the few people that you can actually call like that dude for LAN events. I left last season with all three of those players. I had them top five in the world when I did my like power rankings after
Mm.
Worlds. Was really impressed by Atau. Rise won everywhere he was. Um, they should win this event. Um, so
Agreed.
I think that they're an easy one to take here.
Yeah, I think being the best team in the world, you're going to have a lot of pressure, whether it's number one or number two in our little pressure index here. I think there's an argument for them to be number one, but as I said before, I think regionally as a community, there's just a wider breadth of teams that I think people in the perspective of the community say, okay, these guys have a real chance of winning. I mean, let's not forget, Vitality's still Vitality, right? They didn't make any
Yep.
changes, and this was a team that just ran the gauntlet over everyone. I mean, just raked everyone over the coals. So, when I don't even know where they're going to end up on this little list we're making here, but for K Corp, yeah, it's a one or two on the pressure index. I think two is right, just by being the best team in the world, in my opinion.
You make this roster to win events like this. That's why
Yeah.
you got this team together. Um, okay, passing the baton back to you. Who's three?
Yeah, three's tough.
This is where it
Three
gets
is
kind of
tough.
tough. Yeah.
Um, I would say three, most pressure by the community. I'm going between two in my head right now, so I'm trying to buy some time for myself. Um, oh man, it's tough. Okay, I'm gonna go. I guess I'm gonna go Falcons. I'm gonna go
That's where I was gonna
Falcons.
go too. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay,
Yeah.
because the thing is, I was gonna say BDS, because I think that they're in the same kind of near the same boat as K Corp, where it's like I think everyone kind of saw BDS was second best team in Europe, and the expectation is they should do pretty well here. But I think Falcons is something similar to NA, where it's just like, and even for MENA, they only get to send two teams. Well, I guess that's an improvement, but still, it's only two teams. Um, but they're being rated pretty high, and
Yep.
they've been talked about a lot because of the Johnny Boy rating, and he brought that the first touch, and the community discussed that quite a bit, especially since they're being put over G2 in a lot of spaces. So
Mhm.
obviously, I think most people in MENA are going to be like, yeah, Falcons is our, like you said, the talisman of MENA, as G2 is for NA. I think that Falcons are probably the same way for MENA, but when you start getting on the biggest podcasts, right, on the main channel, and you've got some of the biggest talent, the biggest content creators putting Falcons over G2, I think then the community starts to sway towards, okay, well, maybe I should have paid attention to Falcons. Maybe if you weren't watching Mina, right, now you did, and maybe in the last open qualifier or something like that, and you're seeing what they're doing. So the expectation for me would be that the community holds Team Falcons in high regard and would be, if not at the same level, but somewhere around the same level as Gen G, G2, Vitality, BDS, K Corp, Gentlemates, right? All in that same kind of world. And the expectation would be that they're pushing at least the top four, as you put it, in this pressure index. We're saying top four. Yeah, I think people are probably going to say Falcons have a good shot at top four.
Especially given the fact that the Twins were so good so fast at the international stage. I think that brings a little pressure as well, where we've already seen, okay, they can do it. They've already made a top four before, so now that you go ahead and swap out Mawson for TRK, the pressure's just that much more. And I think there's a little bit of pressure probably internally about the way that this team came to be. Like, the last minute shuffle, and, Cresper had some things to say about it. And I don't have anything to say about how it shook out, but I just think that kind of informs the storyline and provides a little bit more pressure to this team. They have just absolutely dominated Mina. And we're going to see how far down the list the other team from Mina goes here in roll one. But I totally agree. I think that's right where Falcons should be. I don't think it's too hot of a take if people have them winning this whole thing. I'm not doing it myself, but they're a very solid squad who should be contending deep here. It doesn't get any easier at 4. That's why I was going long-winded to buy myself a little bit of time. And you know what? I am torn between two teams, excuse me, as well. I am going to go. I'm going to go Vitality. Um, just because maybe it's not as much from the community. I'm thinking more about the internal pressure. It's been a very topsy-turvy road here to get to this event. There was hypothetically a world where they wouldn't even be here, which seemed bizarre. At the start of the season, everybody just had them just when you were thinking about how strong teams are going to be, you were like, okay, Vitality, and then now let me think about it, just because of how dominant they were last season. Argument to be made for Carmine Core as well, but I think the way that it's gone, this is kind of where they can still, put their proverbial hat where it's like, we still have not lost here. We still have been dominant here at international events. So I think that there's a lot of implied pressure from them. The community probably not as much. I think if they bow out at basically any stage, people will be like, yeah, that's kind of what it is. But also the pressure of like, the season is shorter and you only get 2 splits. Is there a world where they decide to make a change? I would not, but I don't get paid any money to make decisions like that.
Right.
So I'll have Vitality 4, but you could have definitely talked me into a couple more teams. How do you feel about Vitality at 4?
I think Vitality at 4 is good. I do kind of take back my contemplation about BDS. I don't really know how much of the community pressure to get top 4 there is on BDS. I think everyone kind of expects them to do well, and there's so many, as I said before, so many great gladiators coming out from Europe. I just feel like it doesn't really matter so long as 1 or 2 of them get there. I will add, while you were talking, it did, and maybe it was just the colors, but it popped into my head that a good shout might be, if I know you only want to do 4, and I know we're only talking about getting the top 4, but if we're just talking about pressure to do good, whatever that may be, maybe get out of Swiss or something like that, I do think power starts to creep up into that list. And I'll tell you why. Because, well, one, people are starting to put power higher and higher over some of the NA teams like an OG or Luminosity, and there was some dispute about that online. But also, for the love of God, OCE as a region has never had a winning record at an RLCS event. They've had even records, they've gone 50%, and they've had teams that have had winning records. But they, as a region, have never, from their 2 representatives every single time, have never had a winning record. And there's been a lot more talk specifically about power coming into this major than I've seen in many majors before about OCE. I think most people say OCE, they're going to hover maybe somewhere in that 9 to 12 range in most cases. They're going to maybe beat up on the APACs, the SSAs. They're going to take down lower level 4 and 5 seeds from EU and NA, and that's been proven. And then, in fall Rotterdam, they're going to pop off and beat G2.
Yeah.
and then in that same weekend beat G2 and then not get out of Swiss. And it's just like, okay, what are you? Like I don't even know what you are. Like you can beat G2, but then you don't get out of Swiss in that same tournament. So I do think that a lot of people are rating Power pretty well. And I know they're not a top team and no one's expecting them to win. I don't think anyone's expecting them to make top 4. I think that'd be crazy to say too. But I think a lot of people are expecting them to get out of Swiss. And so there might be, we don't talk about OCE a lot in the greater space of Rocket League discourse, but I do think that Power is creeping up with some fans of, hey, this is a team that's going to get out Swiss and maybe could at least get top 8.
They seem to be a sneaky kind of darling dark horse of
Yeah.
like, and I don't know, I could be forgetting somebody, but I don't think we had an OCE team make playoffs since like Chiefs in season 4. I don't know if we've
Oh
ever
gosh,
had.
I don't think so.
If there has been, it was
Uh,
one, and it was not super
yeah.
memorable. But they're definitely creeping up.
Not in RLCS. Not in RLCS for the record. They did do it in E League a long
Okay.
time ago. It was the same Chiefs squad, I believe. But yeah, not in RLCS.
Do you want to go deeper than top 4? I wasn't planning to cut us off.
Well, yeah, we could do like just make get out of Swiss maybe.
Well, what
But
if
I
it's
feel
just
like
if it's individual within a vacuum? Like who, because it still could be the pressure. There's still a bunch of teams who probably think that they should be making a top 4. I think BDS probably think they should be there. Gen G probably
okay,
thinks they should be there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Furia is a team that we haven't listed.
yep.
Who would you put next?
I would probably put Gen G, just because it's an NA team, and if G2 goes down, I think everyone's going to jump on the back of Gen G. I know that kind of contradicts what I said before, but it'll still happen, right? Like I do think that NA fans, if G2 goes down, it's going to be Gen G next if they're still alive, right?
Hmm.
So I think all of the NA teams, but specifically G2 and Gen G are really um, I think the fans are really hoping. I think there's two sides of it. I think there are fans that really don't want NA to do well to, keep the narrative, and then there are fans who are probably NA fans who really want the NA teams, the top NA teams, to do really well so that they could stick it to the people that are being mean to them online. So I would probably go Gen G next, only because they're NA and there is an expectation that NA teams do well, and if they don't, it will only confirm the creeping propaganda that NA is falling behind.
And also, there's some very low hanging fruit that you could,
Hmm.
another first killer could never,
Yeah,
he can
yeah,
never win an event like this. It was a fluke when they won in fall, last season. There's very easy ways to kind of downplay Gen G. I think I think a lot of people would be surprised that it took this long, and I still am not like convinced, but I'm just gonna go ahead and put BDS. Um, Second strongest seed out of Europe, strong region. There's great copium if they don't make a deep run. Drawley first time around, they're still kind of getting their feet under them, what have you. But I think this team should have some expectations. I mean, Monkey Moon, it's not like traditional sports where age is as big of a factor. You can play much longer into your career, but Monkey Moon's been around for a while. He still is very highly rated as far as the broader RLCS goes. Not a lot of people have stayed around the top for as long as he has. And Exotic, I feel like at least personally might imply a bit of pressure to himself.
Mhm.
It's not quite as bad as like a Kevin Durant to the Warriors situation, but it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you only won because you were on Carmine Core with Fatira and Itachi kind of deal.
Right,
Um,
right.
so, I think there's some pressure on them. But that's also a team that I could see going sideways quickly. Um,
Yep.
so I think that's probably about right for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think BDS is it's tough because I feel like I think what you said at the beginning, there's some good copium there if Jolly doesn't perform. And to be fair, there was a couple times during this through all the three of the qualifiers where Brawley had masterclass
Yes.
performances, and then other times he was like doing the Daniel thing where it's like it's his first big event. Like Daniel's first time going to Winter Major, that was his first LAN, young guy. He was like whiffing aerials. And you're like, oh no. Like he misread, I forget what game it was, where he misread a bounce off the ceiling. It kind of got popped up, went close to the ceiling, and he just flew right by and just completely missed. And it was like one of those things that like, okay, pros don't miss that. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just not something that you miss. And clearly it was getting to him. Who knows if like I said, I do think it depends on the type of guy that you are. And I don't know Drawley very well. I've never actually spoken to him. So maybe he's a type of guy that thrives in an environment like that. But I do think there is some good hopium for that. For BDS, I think that's fine. Like I don't know. I feel like we haven't spoken. Like the community doesn't speak about BDS. They get skipped over because they're always good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Monkey Moon. I think they talk a lot about a Monkey Moon. I think they talk a lot about Exotic and then obviously the Drawley pickup. But obviously you have some established players at Monkey Moon and Exotic. But they're kind of in between K Corp, who's just, whipping everyone. And then you have former world champion super team Vitality that's now experiencing some turmoil. And then you have Gentlemates, who has massive content creator fans, and just kind of a big bubble growing over there in that org. And BDS, who's just kind of always been here chugging along, I feel like aren't getting the same amount of press. Everyone goes, oh, yeah, they're the second best team in Europe. They looked great, yada, yada. But I don't know. I really don't know if you're French, this is probably a different discussion. But for the greater audience, I don't know. I don't know if people are. I'll say this. I have not seen the same amount of discussion about BDS that I have about K Corp and Vitality, period. So, and then that's not even including the NA teams. So I think people are just skipping over them and expect them to do well.
They're like the Milwaukee Bucks of the RLCS. It's like, yeah, they're really
Yeah.
good. And we're going to talk about another team.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just the one series, and maybe it's unfair to them that this is the one that really sticks with me. But when I think about BDS in this split, the first thing I think of is the reverse sweep against Carmine Core. Because even when they went up 3-0, my first thought, and maybe it's unfair to them, but my first thought was like, this could totally go sideways. And it ended up like they're comprised of at least two players in Exotic and Drawley who kind of can have that up and down ebb and flow. And it seemed like they kind of disappeared down the stretch there. But the fun thing about this major and all majors is that you could come up with a storyline for all of the teams, whether they're going to be competitive or not. Like there's teams in play.